how do you personally separate this idea of liberation from manipulation?
That's such a good question. I think of fashion as being perfect form of self-expression, but if you give it the power to change who you are from the outside, I think that it becomes a tool of manipulation, like you said. Yeah. And that is why I really don't like influencer hauls.
This is Off the Shelf, where we take the most iconic beauty brands, products, and people in the beauty industry off the shelf and examine the stories behind the story. It's where beauty is treated like the economic, cultural, and power-building force it really is. I'm Susannah Dellinger, and here we're going to talk about what really shapes the industry, who holds the power, how decisions get made, and what it actually takes to build, scale, and quite frankly, survive in beauty. These are the conversations happening behind closed doors about money, relationships, risk, and cult moments. If you're building, breaking through, or trying to understand how beauty really works, or just love a really good story, you're in the right place.
Welcome to Off the Shelf, Christine. I am thrilled to dive in your work about ageism and fashion. Just it completely collides with what we like to talk about, which is whether or not the beauty industry can be a tool for feminism and kind of the shadow side of that as well. But before we dive into all that juicy fun, I have to ask the question. I emailed you to warn you, as all of the world that is watching Love Story, right, with the JFK Jr., Carolyn Bessette, and her time at Calvin Klein. That is what is really sticking with, I think, so many of us women, is just how chic and amazing of a workplace that Calvin Klein is portrayed in this obviously fake TV show. We understand that. But as somebody who was an executive at Calvin Klein in the post Carolyn Bessette Kennedy years, was it really that cool? What was it really like being at Calvin Klein? We all want to know.
Yes. I'm just going to tell you right now. It was so wonderful. It was, and I will tell you, I will be honest, I have not watched much of the show at all because I need to sit down and be able to absorb every detail of it. And I only right now can consume shows like if I'm folding laundry and whatever, and that show warrants sitting down, looking at, what sweater is she wearing, what coat, all of it. I want to do it because of everything. But I have had a lot of communication with people that I worked with. I have gotten a chance to explore, how are they portraying the offices? Because that was my number one question. More so than anything having to do with what color was her hair and did Brad Johns think they did a good job? No. Which the answer is I don't think so. But so much of how they talk about how we embodied the brand was absolutely true. I mean, we did wear black, white, gray. You were an ambassador. And as you mentioned, I got there in the early aughts as Calvin had just sold the company to Phillips Van Heusen. So she was not there. She had actually passed in 99. So she wasn't there. But, you can feel the spirit of something like that. And even Kelly Klein. But what they did do a great job of, there was one scene I hear that he sends her red roses or something.
Yes.
And people say, oh, you can't have
white orchids.
It's 100% true. And you did have concrete floors, the white walls were, I say this in my book, repainted constantly. There was never a mark on a white wall, constantly repainting. And, what was different was everything was glass, not those square kind of cloudy, that would not have passed. Those cloudy things, no.
Yeah.
But everything else. But what was really funny is the coated black Paperclips.
Yes.
100%.
I love when things are that specific in a show.
Somebody was
came from somewhere. And I resonate with that. My last executive job before I went out on my own as an entrepreneur, I was at Trish McEvoy for almost 8 years. And Trish is very particular The white orchid thing, 100%. Nothing in the offices on 5 East except for white orchids. Everybody was sent a white orchid. Like nobody would ever be sent.
I was sent only white orchids from them. Like if you had an anniversary or something.
I think she got it from Calvin Klein. She would say Calvin got it from her, but I think she got it from Calvin.
And you did not have like artifacts on your desk, frame of a husband. No. I had fragrance bottles because I worked on fragrance. I launched his third attempt at a makeup line. I also worked on ready to wear, but we'll talk about it. It's funny. Yeah. I worked on ready to wear, but it was CK Calvin Klein, which was sort of like the Tory Birch Bridge of Europe and Asia. So it was fantastic, but also white folders, and we were given a P-Touch label maker.
Love. Okay.
That's how you labeled folders. I mean, it is.
Wow.
Some people say, oh gosh, it's a cult. I'm like, and I loved every minute of it. Mm-hmm. I say I'm a minimalist since in utero. Because I mean, I have talked to friends that worked at other brands like Prada and and they say that because you have to wear and embody the brand as you work there. And rightfully so. You are representative of the brand that you work for. And they say, they felt like they were sort of wearing a costume going to work. I felt like I'd come home because that was everything. Me, everything. And I mean, I was a 90s queen. I loved every black slip dress you could put on me. So, and until I could and still do. And I couldn't afford a lot in the beginning, especially. So, black not only is slimming, but is very easy to not buy necessarily something Calvin collection, but something a little less expensive. And it kind of looks a little richer. Yeah. But you always bought the shoes. I did get a clothing allowance, and I did always say, you don't sell it. This is all in the book. You don't bite the hand. The accessories designer hand that feeds you, because I borrowed a lot and I would get a lot of shoes.
I love this so much. I have so many questions just about Calvin Klein, but
I do have one thing that really bothers me about the show. She did not discover Kate Moss. And that is a very, very big problem in my mind. And it's being told as like gospel because Ryan Murphy says so. She is absolutely not Fabian Barron, who is a creative genius and was always at Calvin. He had his own agency called Barron & Barron, but he was basically like Calvin for us because Calvin was walking out the door. I worked within Calvin. There was a little agency called CRK, Calvin Richard Klein. And we did all the work and, campaigns and all of it. And I was the VP of marketing. And Fabian would do like all the packaging, all the campaigns, all the shoots and everything. He brought Kate. He found Kate. Wow. He brought her to Calvin. And I'm sure Carolyn was like, yeah, great. But he is responsible. And that is like my one hang up.
And the show, it's literally her finding this picture and seeing pictures on a table and being like, this one, right? The magic of Hollywood rewriting. Yeah.
Right. Fabian saw her, I think, on Face magazine or something to that effect. She was really young, but it was like 92.
Mm-hmm. I'm waiting for Kate Moss to come out and talk about it.
Well, that's what I was wondering, if she would remedy that argument, but
she's too busy being Kate.
I'm too busy being amazing.
I don't know. You guys go watch your
fabulous for this nonsense. She's not going to be like, poor Daryl Hannah. I mean,
poor Daryl Hannah.
That op-ed she had to write for the New York Times to be like, I'm not a bad person.
Daryl Hannah. And you know what? This actually ties into what we're talking about today, because we've gone down some rabbit holes. But this is so interesting. How men can just completely characterize a living female who's right here to go talk to and speak to and share, like somebody who actually alive and lived and was centered in it. Now, whether or not she was going to give him anything to use is another story, but to be respectful enough versus making a caricature out of such a respected actress and making her look like this insecure, jealous shell of a woman who's having drug-fueled parties. Ryan Murphy, please take some accountability on a hit that you just did on a woman.
I agree with you. It's one thing to talk about the two that passed, and even still, maybe a little more respect about John, but
yeah,
100% agree with you. Yep.
yeah. I feel
I know we have to move on, but
I know, but
I know I'm a little and that's where I go to some of the younger people watching it, are taking it all as gospel, and you just have to know it's sensationalized for TV, and just, there's so many great books out there about them.
Yeah.
Read a little bit about the history.
100%. I love this so much. Okay, so you then leave your VP role at Calvin Klein. And if I read this correctly, you relocate, you get married, you have twin babies all within like 12 months. Like you're like, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Not just a career pivot. Like that is an identity complete reshift, right? You're a wife, you're a mom, you're in a new place. A lot of times we're in a role like you were at Calvin Klein. That's your identity, right? And now you have this new identity. Looking back, do you think that this was necessary to kind of get to this next point of life for you to become, this voice, this author, this writer that you are? Or was it all just kind of, this is life throwing everything at me and I'm surviving it and coming out the other side?
What I love is when you sent me the questions this morning, you used the word dismantle. And I was like, oh, what a fantastic word. Beautiful word. So rich in its meaning, because that's exactly what had to happen. I think it had to happen. Partially because we are so tied. I was so tethered to who I was as a fashion executive. And then even before that, just a New Yorker. I mean,
oh, true.
I mean, it was just so much who I am. And today I still have a 917 number. I'll just be honest. And I've been gone.
You do. I can attest to that. You texted me from it.
Because there's a part of you that you never let go of. And that's part of you that you come of age and you come who you are at a certain period and you hold on to that. It was very much, I call it like you had to clean out the closet figuratively and literally, because I had to break it down. It was, I said in the book, it was like an identity crisis, because I didn't know, I'd never been married. I'd never been a mother, and a mother of multiples at that. And I did move to Boston, but then quickly thereafter, I moved to Atlanta. So I then became a Southerner. I mean, which is, as you know.
I live in Charleston.
I know. It's a whole ball of wax here. It is, it's culture shock a little.
Slightly, I'm sure. Slightly.
Uh-huh. And so I had to sort of like break down to rebuild. And some of that did start with what you put on and what you look like on every day, because I didn't want to just say, okay, throw on whatever and go about my day. This is where you go back to like, who was I when I came of age? And what you do, and this is sort of the ethos of the book, is like you try things on. It's a lot of trial and error to figure out who you are and who you strive to be. That happens in certain periods of our life. And that happened again, when I was 40. It happens a lot for women post-menopause, because they've shape-shifted and they've become empty nesters, and they're like, who am I now? Yes. But for me, it was motherhood, wife, new city, new identity, sort of. And what was I going to do with it? And I needed to break down, really do a lot of soul searching, because I didn't want it to come from just out here, which is something we'll talk about. Like, I don't think fashion that's thrown at you should tell you who to be. It had to come from inside, and I had to try, quote unquote, try things on. The funny thing is, Jenna Lyons was at the helm of J. Crew at the time. And she had made it called, instead of a catalog, it was they called it like the style guide. And she was putting out there, like, this is you on any given Tuesday. And she was sort of like, put on the men's button down, wear it with a sequin skirt, and all this. The bubble necklace was a big thing, which I'm not a jewelry person. But I went back, as J. Crew and prep was like my complete upbringing. I was like the first, I bought the preppy handbook the day it came out. I still have it. Dog-eared as it is. And I went through that process again to figure out, and it worked. It was great, but it was arduous, but it was important for me because I was trying to figure out what kind of writer did I want to be. I knew I wanted to be a writer, and I knew I was going to explore that.
I love that. So there's a quote in the framing of your book where it says, fashion gives women the power to dream and reinvent themselves. But you've also named the mechanism that the industry makes women, like you said, feel perpetually almost like one purchase away from being enough, from fitting in. How do you personally separate this idea of liberation or expression from manipulation?
That's such a good question. So I think of fashion as being the perfect form of self-expression. But if you give it the power to permit you to be somebody or to change who you are from the outside, I think that it gives that it becomes a tool of manipulation, like you said. Yeah. And that is why I really don't like, like influencer hauls, a lot of that, because it's almost like, buy this, you'll have this life. Whereas instead of you personally are going to try this on. Does this feel good? Do I look like myself? Do I feel like myself? Am I fidgety? And it all becomes about you from the inside out and what feels comfortable, and then what brings out the best in you, and because it cannot come from someone else. And it's the same with beauty, although beauty is way worse because they are making promises. Fashion is not, you shouldn't take promises from fashion. Beauty's out there making that. Yeah. You shouldn't from beauty either, but they're out there making the promise. At least fashion, it's a quiet promise.
It's implied versus
an implied, suggestive promise. Right. Have a Birkin, you're going to be amazing. You're going to feel successful if you get a Kelly bag.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
But it's implied, and that is really one of my biggest concerns about links and influencers and all of that, and the consumerism of it all. It's not out here, people. You really have to discover it for yourself.
I love this. And as we talk about, ageism and what happens as we get older, obviously, if we listen to Hollywood, fashion, beauty, the world, after the age of 30, we're supposed to all just quietly go into the night as women, right? Like we're all just supposed
my God.
Here, if that was their way, we would all just kind of we're inconvenient if you could just go out to pasture, so to speak. But you said, and I believe with you, that your style gets sharper, you get more personal, you get more joyful after 50. Of course, when we listen to amazing women, like I was just with Gloria Steinem for Women's History Month.
I saw that.
And it's like,
congratulations.
Like it all kind of starts at 50, right? Like we're smart, we're wise, we've got resources now, we know how to express ourselves. Like this should be more joyful and fun. Yeah. If you could change one word in the way that fashion talks about aging, what word would that be?
Okay, so fashion and beauty. I mean, if we could just take the word anti out of the vocabulary in general, you know how I mean, because that right in there is the fight, the correction, the restoring, the resurfacing, all of this. There's no peace. There's no comfort. There's no joy. It's so terrible. And it just creates such anxiety for women who, to your point, like we're not enough. Our value does not decline with age. It only increases. But it reminds me of, the other word I would just say is age appropriate, but anti is really, because they kind of go hand in hand, because there used to be when print was even more prevalent, but remember they used to put like a garment on somebody and then it was like 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, like what? How to style this. Like how to style it.
Yes. We're going to add a little cardigan when we get older.
You got more covered up. The shoe got shorter. Your hair got shorter. The dress got longer. And I always thought, like, what are they going to put the paper bag on, close it lower and lower? Like, as you got to 70, it's here. The turtleneck got higher. Right. Because you're like covering. To your point, they're just trying to get us to go away.
Yeah.
And
it's because they're terrified of us, but that's a story for another day.
That is number one. And the irony is the reason, and I don't know how, but we're so not represented, and we have 15 trillion in purchasing power. We represent 95% of household purchases. Like, it is bad business not to go to support us and go after us. I mean, it's just dumb business decisions. I don't want to. And we are like, we're earmarked 5 to 10% of marketing budgets. I'll never get it.
Wild. All of this just leads me to one conclusion: is they're just not that smart.
No,
they're just not that smart. They're afraid, and they're just not that smart. Like I hate to generalize like that. This is bad business. The math doesn't math.
The math doesn't
absolutely no sense. That's okay. We're here now to fix it all.
So take over. Since writing, I started writing for this magazine or this online publication called The Fine Line, which was too early in its breakthrough. I will say it was breaking boundaries because it was for 45 plus, and it was talking about women in a respectful way, in a way that they were wanting to be and needed to be represented, because the woman that started it was in her 60s a decade ago. And she said, Good Housekeeping and Red Book are not who we are. We're more stylish, healthy, wealthy, wise, etc. This is a different generation of aging. And she couldn't monetize it because it wasn't there. Now, today she probably could have, but it lasted for 2 years. And I wrote, and it really changed. But I would say there's been a groundswell since that. That's been a decade ago. And I've noticed some change. Not enough, clearly. Yeah. But
do you think the question that we were talking about in Gloria's living room, and that I've center on all of our guests, is do you think that fashion and or beauty lumped kind of together, do you think that the fashion industry can actually be a tool for feminism when you think about expression, identity? If so, what do you think would have to change to close the gap to get us there versus the weaponizing that's happening? Or do you think it's too far gone?
No, it's not too far gone, but I did want to, that was the one I really looked into. Please.
We leave the juiciest for last.
Well, yeah. I think that if we could give women if we could shift from, and this goes back a little bit to this whole anti thing, but from prescribing away and saying this is how you need to age and this is who you are, to giving them permission to evolve. Okay, so a good example would be beauty. This is what you should, there's a lot of shoulds. This is what you should look like. This is how you fight it. This is what you should wear, instead of permission to say this is, you are evolving and go for it. Because both fashion and beauty are such great forms of self-expression, and you can play with both. I mean, between color and shapes and all of that, but you have to take away the rules.
Yes. And I love the word play. I always come back to that in beauty and also in fashion too, that's what I think the superpower of beauty and fashion is. It's this idea to play, to find what fits with you. And somehow we have gotten so far away from that.
And when you play, there's joy. You know, like the power of play is like there's a freedom to, and also you can be who you want to be, and you don't have to be. When it is prescriptive, everybody looks the same, and that could be the plastic surgery. Everybody looks the same. Truly, and everybody in style right now looks the same
it's
too.
So boring.
It's so boring.
Yeah.
And what's really sad is, like, as great as Love Story is, now everybody wants to look like her, and
which is insane because she wasn't trying to look like she was just being her, right? From the little bit.
Come full circle back to that her style was less about the vintage Levi's and more about how she carried herself.
100%. I could talk to you for 3 hours and still have.
Oh my God, I could talk to you forever.
So please, no, I'm going to be like, hey, let's do a round two. This one was like a quick wham bam. But please, if there is one thing that our listeners could do to support you right now, including buying your book, because we are going to tell everybody to go buy Closed Minded right now and follow you, what else would be supportive for you and your work?
Look at yourself in the mirror and don't say I could cry. Don't say, what can I change? Just say, what can I celebrate?
I love that. We celebrate you today. Thank you so much for sharing, all of you. Enjoy the rest of your St. Patrick's lucky day. Thank you so much for being on Off the Shelf. And please let our listeners know where to find you. We're going to include it in the show notes, but where can they find you and your work to connect with you?
Okay, so I have a platform called Writing in Black and White, and it's really about examining the gray areas, and there's kind of pun intended about gray, of fashion and beauty through the lens of aging. And I just published a book called Clothes Minded, Fashionable Essays About Finding Yourself. And it is on sale. And it's really, truly, it's love, loss, motherhood, marriage, reinvention, all told through what I wore.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much for being on. These conversations matter because who gets to speak shapes who gets to win. If this episode challenged how you see beauty, business, or the power behind the industry, share it with someone who needs to hear it. To connect or explore more, check the show notes. I'm Susannah Dellinger, and this has been Off the Shelf.